This is version 2 and a little extension on the previous video of comparing Apple and Pinar. And yesterday we looked at some of the concepts that were similar between the two. And we'll just extend on some of these this evening. So Pinar looks at teachers as being disempowered, and when you read Apple's um, concepts that he presents in terms of neoliberalism, neoconservatism, the authoritarian populist school, and also managerialism. These all support, to some degree, the concept of the disempowerment of the teacher. The mandatory national statewide curricula of neoliberalism and neoconservatism um, disempower the teacher because it doesn't allow them to make independent choices. Apple further extends this here uh, that to that really challenges it so that teachers become empowered. And he states on page 33, the road I want to travel on has exits that are not visible on the maps about education, culture, government, and the economy provided to us by dominant groups. So that implies that he wants to have avenues whereby people can make independent decisions for what's right at that point in time. And it's another important concept there is that it's what's imposed by the dominant groups, and that links in with his concept of repositioning later on in the book. The neoliberalism ties in strongly with the Pinar's Sputnik crisis, and it and that the Sputnik crisis is also with the Cold War, and we talked about that last night. So the neoliberalism concept of patriotism and character education goes along with Pinar in terms of the Kennedy era and the patriotism, character, and the physical fitness, the emphasis on those three concepts in the Kennedy era. Moving right along, Apple sees the education system really as a melange of, or an integration of the concepts of neoliberalism, neoconservatism, authoritarian, populist, and managerialism concepts. Also, he looks at education as the site of struggle and compromise, and that there is an important concept because what it does is it allows academic freedom because that there is the struggle, and um, the Pinar supports that concept of academic freedom, and in terms of he links academic freedom in the reassertion of the teacher as the curriculum scholar, and this academic freedom is where the intellect and the individual or the teacher is independent. And he explains that insofar as there's a disconnect to some degree between academia and the teachers in the public system. And he feels that it's really important that the academics maintain that intellectual freedom, and hopefully that there will be percolate down through the system. Um, they also feel, especially Pinar, that it's critical to challenge the current discourse. Um, One question in terms of the curriculum theory piece with Pinar, and that I wasn't really quite sure of, was his quote that rhetoric carries more freight, and I wasn't quite sure of exactly what that meant. But I kind of take out of that the academic rhetoric carries weight, and but I'm not completely sure on that. The In terms of the curriculum approach by Pinar, He feels it should be autobiographical, historical, and include social theory. And it's interesting also that the fact of the autobiographical piece indicates that has it ties in with that academic freedom and intellectual empowerment of teachers, that there is a subjective, maybe perhaps not a subjective side, but there is an individual side to that in terms of the autobiographical. So, and last night we mentioned the research by Bower that Apple cited, and in terms of the student-centered approach led to more positive results. The females felt better. The feeling about mathematics was stronger. Students were not turned off by the mathematics. And Pinar looks at, kind of makes the comment that we need to wake up from the nightmare of where we are. And in order to change, he says that we need to deconstruct the institutional pragmatism, identify the social sources, and trace the historical roots. And in some ways, Bowler's research kind of links in with that, because it forces us to deconstruct the pragmatism of the authoritarian traditional approach, and it identifies the social source of it in terms of the pragmatism and the business concept that is associated with education, so that we can focus on the students. And it does trace the historical roots, and it does ultimately give us an option of producing something that is better for the students. One other interesting concept that I don't believe that I brought in last night was the concept of what it is that the students do for the school compared to what the school does for the uh, for the um, for the student. And in a lot of cases, some of the schools today, they're attracting the influential parents and then the motivated parents and the able child. And what it does is it creates, to some degree, a cycle whereby these schools um, attract the creme de la creme, and the students get profiled in these schools, and they have opportunities in these schools to excel. And because it attracts people, and with the emphasis on the national standard, national curricula, and the state and national testing, then what happens is the results of these schools become public, and then it further cycles to attract those able children, and the parents that are motivated will seek out these schools. So, and that there is a concern, and I think that it goes back again to Apple's act of repositioning, whereby the policymakers and decision makers have to address this concept, whereby those that are in the least position of power have access to these schools. Because I know myself, I taught in a school that was the elite school in the province for probably about the last 15 years. And students would come in from other schools, and their marks would probably go up about 10%. And it was interesting when you talk to the students and the parents as to what made the difference. And the biggest difference, that most students would say that it's cool to do well in that kind of school. And because everyone else was excelling and in the school system, then that brought them up, and they they put in the extra work to achieve higher than what they were achieving before. So that's it for this second recording this evening, having a look at Apple and Pinar. These are a few nuggets in the two books, both good and strong pieces that make connections in different ways, but still similar in a lot of others.